Thank you for making it up this morning and being here. And I'm going to pray, give a brief introduction, and just ask some questions. You be thinking about questions too you may have. I'll try to cut it off at 7:45. And we're going to stop at 8 o'clock. I know all of you are faithful presbyters and want to be in the meeting at 8:15. I do, particularly for worship. My old friend David Winburn is going to be preaching, so I want to be in there. So let me pray. Lord Jesus, we give you thanks for another day. We know that your word tells us your mercies are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And so as we gather here in these brief moments, just to think about Daydream as a group of folks in this room and as a denomination, Lord willing, beyond this room, that we think about just planting churches and daughtering churches particularly. And we're glad for the opportunity to discuss these matters. And I pray this in Christ's name. Amen. Amen. So again, the emphasis this morning, as you see two guys sitting here, is on planting churches, yes, but also on just mother-daughter relationships. And so if you're here this morning and you're a part of a church, I trust that from this conversation that we'll have, you'll consider going back and how might we be involved in potentially being a mother-daughter church plant. But I want you guys to hear from them mostly. We're recording this so that folks outside the room will hear it going forward. So introductions, give a brief introduction of who you are.
Matt Lucas, I'm pastor at Reformation Presbyterian Church. Got 4 kids. They're all grown and out of the house now. Been at Reformation, can't believe it, 17 years now. Hard to believe. So.
Zack, Keuthan, church planting pastor, Fletcher Prez, 3 kids, not out of the house. Very much in the house. Almost 10, 8, 6, 2 boys and a girl. I was on staff at Reformation for 8-9 years before they sent me out to plant Fletcher Prez, and we're in our second, third year in terms of the models. Yeah. We'll get into that in a minute.
Well, thank you both for just taking a few minutes this morning to share your story for us to listen into. So you began to talk about it. Zack, tell us a little more from each of your perspectives. How did the vision for daughtering a church from Reformation kind of begin? Where did the burden come from? Things like that.
Why don't you start? I think it's a sweet story from Reformation side.
Yeah. So when I interviewed at Reformation in 2009, I just mentioned sort of an offhand comment that, maybe because they were asking about visions of ministry. And one of the things I said is maybe if the Lord grows the church enough, we could maybe plant a church one day. And I noticed one of the elders who was in the room perked up. And I learned later that was part of their desire and vision, really from the beginning of the church, which started back in 98, 99. And so that kind of dovetailed, my desire and their desire together. Over the years, we did a few things to try to help prepare the congregation for that. We would have a mission emphasis weekend. One of those was on church planting. And so we brought a church planter in to talk about church planting. Occasionally would communicate that to the congregation so they had some sense that this was part of the vision of the church. But we had no idea when, how, all of those kinds of things over the course of time. And then in 2020, February 2020, we had our annual Officers and Wives Retreat on church planting. We thought we were ready. And 3 weeks later, this virus showed up that shut everything down. And that set us back several years and then kind of got back on track, probably around 2023, kind of talking about it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I did not go into seminary thinking I was going to be a church planter. I was on the radar possible. I did a few pre-seminar or trainings, and it was like, it's in the back of my mind, but it wasn't in front of my mind. And when Reformation was looking for an associate and brought me in just to talk and interview, they're like, hey, this is something we could see doing, but we're not hiring you to be a church planter. We're hiring you to be our associate. If it turned, just having that, like, that was really nice not to have that pressure and expectation, because I just was not ready right out of seminary. I needed to live with Jesus in the ups and downs of ministry and get experience and be with Matt and trained and all that. So I think the burden for it, or just the desire for it, grew over time coming out of that being trained and invested in seeing ministry. And then I think some of it too is my own story. I did not grow up in a Christian home. I didn't grow up in the church. And so I think, gaining confidence as a pastor, shepherd, then seeing my own story and wanting to reach people who were like me, who are outside the church, I think that desire grew over time. And then some very practical things I think God forced us to kind of think about it was our congregation was growing. Reformation, if you've ever been there in Hendersonville, it's downtown, it's landlocked. You're not going to build a bigger building. And we were growing, and it's like, what are we going to do? We don't want to go to multiple services, just philosophy of ministry. And it's like, I think it's time to church plant. And then Session said, hey, why don't you go to assessment and see? And assessment was very helpful for me and my wife to gain some more clarity of vision and desire for it.
Yeah, if I could just sort of add to what Zack was saying, part of the commitment that the session made was we're in this location. We want to stay here. Our facilities can handle a membership of probably about 300 max. We don't really want to do 2 services. And so the natural implication is if you're not going to move and build somewhere else, is you've got to plant churches if you continue to grow. And so that was definitely part of the session's discussions over the years and kind of thinking through this. The other thing I'd mention is, we talked to Zack early on about, the possibility one day, if the Lord wills, being a church planter. And one of the things that's been helpful in this whole process, not necessary to plant a church, but helpful, is just Zack and I have grown to be very good friends.
Yeah.
And our ability to trust each other in ministry and communicate with each other has really helped in this whole process as you kind of go through and figure out what to do.
That's part of like the preparation, getting ready for it, because there's a lot of insecurity that comes with planting a church, and especially mother-daughtering, who's staying, who's going. There can be a lot of opportunities for hurt feelings or miscommunication. And to know, even if one of us get into that space, I remember one time I got insecure and I had to just go talk to Matt. It's like we have years of relationship and trust built. That just, I don't know. And then the session, elders just love and trust each other. It's just huge. And that really helped me deal with some stuff that I just needed to deal with on my own, knowing that we had that trust.
Yeah.
Maybe bore down just a little bit on kind of the planning process when you're kind of working your way right up to launch, and from the perspective of the mother and the daughter, can you just unpack some of that for the group here?
Define launch.
Well, in terms of
Like the preparation
just the
process.
preparation, the planning, the process, just a little more of the details, if you will. Of that,
Maybe I'll say a few things and I'll hand it over to you. So we'd never done this before, didn't know what we were doing. We just had this romantic notion of planting a church. No, I mean, it certainly begins with love for Jesus and wanting him to be glorified in the expansion of the kingdom, kind of being the motivation of it all, and seeing in the scriptures rationale for planting a church. But we did start some concrete planning. Obviously, Zack going to assessment, Tom Hawks was extremely helpful for us in a lot of the just details and particulars that we needed to do. We had, along the way, financially, started a church planting fund, sort of separate from our budget. Congregation knew about it. If anybody wanted to give money to it, they could. It was sort of a just out there, and it started to grow a little bit. We had extra funds, from maybe surplus funds in there at the end of the year. And then one of the things that we also did in trying to prepare the congregation was to have a Sunday school class kind of after we got our ducks in a row. And I think I maybe taught some on more the biblical rationale, and then Zack handled the kind of instruction on here's what it's going to look like and how we're going to fund it and all these different things. So it's kind of a joint effort between the two of us to begin preparing the congregation.
Yeah. Yes. I'll repeat a little bit, but yeah, starting off with sending me to assessment was a huge preparation and help to me. Then coming back, getting the congregation ready, that 4 or 5 week Sunday school, I think was very helpful. And then one of the best things was in our model, we typically have an explorer year. So I was sent out really on my own, and you communicated to the congregation, I think, very helpful expectations. I think you said something like, as a church plant, we're planting a seed in the ground. Zach's gonna be planted in the ground. You're not gonna really see much of Zach. He's in the ground. Just kidding. And it's true. For like 6 months, there's not a whole lot to show for the Explorer year, but it's now Fletcher, but I'm in Fletcher, networking, talking, getting a vision, thinking through things. I think I was chomping at the bit to get started, and you're like, hey, take your time. You don't need to, and that was really good, wise counsel. So I had an Explorer year, and during this time it was so helpful. One of the things I did was network with, getting to know city council members, mayor, all that. And I was so hesitant to do this. I was like, I don't want people to shoot us down, or I got in my head. And I went and talked to Tom Shoger, who had a lot of experience doing this as a church planter. And he's not gonna like me saying it this way, but the message I walked away with, he's like, don't be dumb, go do it. And
that sounds like Tom Shoger.
He didn't say those words. He was very great. That's what I heard. But he gave me some encouragement, like, hey, this is what came out of me going and talking and networking. And I went and did it a couple of times, and I loved it. And it really has served us really well and opened up different relationships and connections, either with Parks and Rec or whatever now in the Fletcher. And who knows what else will come of it down the road. But Explorer Year was huge. And during Explorer Year, networking, evangelism, going to churches and building a support team with individuals on other churches. And it's just huge for a foundation of preparation. There are lots of churches, many of y'all in this room, who are supporting us. And so it's like we're a mother church, but we also have lots of aunts and sisters and cousins, however you want to look at it. And that was huge, laying that foundation. And then the back end of my Explorer year was when we pulled together people who were interested, at least considering being part of the daughter church. And we would spend Sunday afternoon, evenings, eat a meal, have a Bible study, talk about together, what could this look like? This is where the dreaming and planning for people really get their minds around what this could look like. And so we started in September, ran through the end of October. And by the end of that time, I had even more clarity of vision with what are we going to do? What's it going to look like? And we had something to present to Presbytery to prove me from going to an Explorer year to actually starting a church plant with a team.
Very good. So as I'm sitting here, again, unique to mother-daughter relationships, there's church planting ideas in general, but specific to mother-daughter, was a core group from your church, or kind of unpack that a little bit, kind of how that insecurities manifested itself, and things like that?
I tried to get a more diverse core team from some sister churches, from just people in the community that I thought would come. The truth is, in our case, every single one of our core team members came from Reformation.
Okay.
So absolutely key to us. So I think we started with 30 adults and kids when we started with our core team.
This was interesting. People from the congregation started asking, is the session going to appoint people to go? No, that's not how it works. This is a totally voluntary thing. But it was like we had no idea.
Oh, yeah.
When Zack started hosting these meetings, like, who's going to show up? Is it going to be 100 people? Does the whole congregation want to go? Is it going to be 5? What is this going to look like? So that was part of the insecurities, just not knowing. Yeah. And just, it really was a work of faith. That we had a lot of faith, but just trusting God to provide the right people for this.
Yeah. I'll just say, the first person who told me, hey, me and my family want to be part of the church plant, was the first person during those meetings to say, "Hey, I think we're not going to do it." and then there was someone, and she, I mean, in our church now, I barely knew her, and she's amazing. And I didn't know she was even interested into like the week before we started these core team meetings. Right. You just never know. And that's truly, we trust God. Send us who you want to be part of this. And that means sometimes people that you expect will be part of it are not going to be part of it, and the people you have no clue will be.
Yeah. So I saw some hands. Hold off just a second. I know there was some hot questions that need to be asked. I got just two more, and I'll because there's people dying, I'm sure, in what you're saying. Biggest challenge from your perspective as mom and your perspective as son or daughter or whatever you are. Because we got to be honest with this group. I mean, we can't.
The particulars of like financing, we worked that out. That wasn't a real big issue. And, our church planting fund, what did we set a goal of 100,000? So, and I think you got it. Okay. And then we supported or continued to support. We had a 4-year plan, for support. So that worked itself out. We were concerned about okay, when this group leaves, who's going to replace them in serving? They were primarily in youth and music in terms of the people who left, where they were volunteering. And the Lord replaced those people. And actually there's more people serving now in those capacities, which has been wonderful to see. I think the biggest thing was the relational aspect. And, Tom kind of prepared us a little bit for that. Not only our relationship, but you have a group leaving, and they were well connected with people who stayed, the sending group, and that was really hard, and probably harder than we anticipated. And even delayed effects 6 months later, feel, these people are really not coming back, or sometimes it was even folks who weren't really close to those people there anymore. And just that sense of loss. If there was one big struggle that we dealt with, it was sending a group away that we loved and not being connected with them. And in retrospect, one of the things I wish we would have done is to have some connecting points along the way. And I know Zack, it's right for them to have their own sense of identity and kind of be on their own 2 feet, but to have maybe, if they're doing a service project in Fletcher, our people could help them do the service project in Fletcher in order to kind of increase their footprint there, something like that, so there will be places along the way for our people to connect with them.
Good. You said biggest challenges?
Yeah, biggest challenge or a big challenge.
Yeah, I don't know about mother-daughter. I mean, humanly speaking, I'll just say the mother-daughter is such a great, wise model. Jay Kraut, church planter, village pres, he came and spoke to our core team when we were thinking about this. And he said, look, if you have a strong team from the get-go, it puts you a year or two ahead. And we're experiencing that. I had a friend come to our church a few Sundays ago, and he said, how long have you guys been worshiping together? I'm like, well, every Sunday a year. He's like, you guys feel like, he's like, don't take this the wrong way. I didn't. He's like, you guys feel established. Like there's a culture here. There's a love here. There's a substance here. I was like, I think we've just been set up really well and supported and resourced. So much there has helped with the challenges that could be there. If you're just on your own, I mean, there's so early in our own, I can tell you, there's so many unknowns with church planting. That's one of the hardest parts. You just don't know. And you're constantly just trying to figure out what's the next thing. And it's really exciting, but it's also really hard or tiring. Mm-hmm. But if you have the support, financial, training, the other big obstacle for me was I've never done this before. What do you do in this phase at this time? And Tom Holland's material was so helpful for me to know, okay, in Explorer Year, here's the things that you're aiming at. Tom, you developed here's stages of a church plant from conception, birth, on, and you broke down different columns for what do you do in these categories. I still come back to that, and I'm like, looking through, okay, where are we? What still needs to be done? Each church plant's different, but it's still helpful to have that training. And biggest obstacle is just that you're not sure what to do and finding the resourcing. Alan invited me to just to audit a D-Min class through Erskine on church planting, and that was very helpful. So just not knowing what to do and resourcing guys what to do.
Very good. So Reformation Pres, how has she been? You've already alluded to it a little bit. How's she been blessed or strengthened as a result of the living by faith?
Yeah, I think definitely strengthened in faith.
Okay.
Going through this process, which I asked our session this recently. I'm like, reflecting back on it, how do you think the process went? They were like, we thought it went really well. Honestly, we never had a big catastrophe by God's grace, and I think people saw this is definitely possible, and God has done something wonderful here. You believe in the sovereignty of God. You believe in the goodness of God. Jesus is building his church when you actually participate in it in a very concrete way, and kind of risk some things and see it work. It grows your faith, and so that's been big. We've also, grown in terms of more people serving in different capacities, and then.
So just clarify, people left and there's now more?
Yeah, so we,
we'll make sure that got recorded.
Yeah.
Well, and Tom Hawks mentioned, like, that's often the case. Not that it's guaranteed, Jesus can do whatever he wants, right? But oftentimes when...
It wasn't a name it and claim it kind of thing.
Yeah. But Jesus honors sacrifice and faithfulness, and a lot of times when a mother church will send out people, it might not be right away, but zoom out a few years, there's typically a lot of growth that comes to the mother as well as the daughter. And you guys are experiencing that, right?
Yeah. We would have been okay if we didn't take in anybody new as members, but over the course of the last year plus, we've taken in that many plus another almost 100%. So that's, and we hope the Lord will allow us to do this again, is the goal.
So that would answer the question, would you do this again? So yeah.
Would do it again, yes. Of course, you know what you know now. But yes, definitely would do it again.
Okay. So last question I have, and then I'll open it up. You guys ask. Okay, go ahead.
Go real fast. Go. The question you said on the daughter side, what are the things?
Yeah, fair enough. Low security from a daughter's perspective.
A few things. One, there were people at Reformation who now in the daughter context can stretch their wings. I've seen some guys step up and grow in their faith. I think just given space and opportunity for that, I think that's true even in my own soul. There's so many different ways that I've grown. Just having that space and context. Matt would do everything he could to help me grow, but someday it's just like being on my own. And I can always fall back on you. Now it's like, I got to fall back on Jesus, right? And there's just ways of...
He's a lot better.
And then just seeing people come back, in our context, seeing people come back to the church. So there's a family who got out of the COVID hit, a lot of stories that you guys know, got out of the church, and now they're coming back to the church and being the place. There's another young couple who just joined, and they're like, we have seen something different at Fletcher Pres. And the guy told me, like, honestly, like a year ago, I thought I was just done with the church, but we're seeing something different here. It's focused on Jesus. You guys love each other, and we want to be part of that. And just like get into the community and be in that area of the county to be able to make that impact. Just be part of those stories.
Last question for me. So there's guys out here that are thinking either from a mother perspective or maybe even being a part of a church plant daughter situation. A bit of advice you might offer to those that are sitting out here as they're considering daughtering and planting another congregation.
I would say just start praying. That's the number one thing. You need the Lord. He's the one who plants his church. And start praying, start laboring together as a session. We were unified as a session, and that is extremely important that everybody is on the same page, because you want to be a united front to the congregation, and for them to sense the confidence of the faith of the session going forward. So I think praying, beginning to plan together, being on the same page, that's where I would start.
Good. From your perspective.
And then talk to Tom.
I don't know what advice other than I love church planting, and I maybe was pleasantly surprised by how much I'm enjoying it and how fun it is. I'm sure there'll be hard things. There have been hard things. The hard things right now are just living in the trenches with people, which is just pastoring. So there are some hard things, and I have hard stories. But in terms of church planting, I mean, you got to put the work in. There's work, but I love doing the work, and then being resourced and supported. It's been huge. But I don't know, some guys are hesitant to be church planters, or sometimes we maybe have a false conception of what that means. But if someone's considering church planting, I would really encourage the consideration. I've grown so much.
Sweet.
Can I say just you real quick? I'd also just like to mention, I'm very, I hate to use this word, but proud of Zack. He's done a great job. He's worked hard, very teachable. He's trusted the Lord, and certainly grateful for all of his labors. And I think, part of the answer to the question is also selecting the right church planter that fits what you're trying to do. A man of character and who really loves the Lord, and also a man who's gifted in the right ways. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is, we're not a big church. We're not a flashy church. In other words, you don't have to be a church of 500 to go plant a church. Really, it's just a matter of trusting the Lord and being willing. So.
All right, I'm going to open it up. I saw these two hands. You guys go ahead first.
Basic question. I'm from Maryland. I know where Hendersonville is. Where's Fletcher, and how did you all decide to? That was the plan.
Yeah.
You didn't say.
Yeah, so Fletcher's in between here and Asheville. So in between Hendersonville and Asheville, just kind of keep going up 26. Several reasons. There's no Presbyterian church in Fletcher. It's far enough away from the mother that makes sense justifying going, but it's close enough that our core team, who's still in Hendersonville or on this side of the county, could drive and be part of it. Also connects us closer to Asheville, and City Church has been a very strong supporter. One of our provisional elders, John Hupple's here. He's from City Church. Duff has encouraged their church to continue to pray for us, even said if anyone wants to be part. It was just a way to partner together. So a lot of different reasons that went into. And then the other thing was when I was just exploring and networking, the town was pretty welcoming. Not necessarily, no one ever said, hey, we're 100% for what you're doing. And it never said they're 100% against it either, but just like would help me know the next person. Hey, have you talked to so-and-so? Have you talked to so-and-so? And it was just an easy way to start to get to know people. And as those connections, it's just like, I think this is the place.
I'd also mention just broad strategy, thinking about Western North Carolina.
Yeah.
The population growth is along the axis of 26 and 40. And so as we've thought about a bigger picture, not just one church plant, but a bigger picture of church planting in Western North Carolina, and not just our church. I mean, Duff and I have talked about this for years. Rhett and I have talked about this. Those are the likely candidates along those two corridors for church planting.
Mm-hmm.
So Zach, for you, it wasn't 100% clear to me in your Explorer year. Sounds like you didn't have a core group yet, and it was just you doing spade work. Is that kind of the case? And just, as you said, you were planted and not seen. Is trying to think of how important it is to have a good core group at the very beginning. Or it sounds like you did that spade work first, and then came up for air, and had the core group sort of. Trying to think of the ordering of all that work.
Yeah, I don't know case by case, every church plant, every church planter is different. For me, having that time on my own was critical.
Right.
I needed to get my head around some things before I was ready to lead a group of people. So what are you gonna tell a group of people? Here's our vision, here's where we're going. And certainly our core team was part of shaping that, but I came with 80% or 90%, so they had something to work with, and then they got to, help shape that in some direction. If I would have started that from day one, it would have been like, he doesn't know what he's doing. I didn't know what I was doing, right? Or the question you want to know, where are we going? Well, I didn't know until I did some of that spade work. I needed 3 months, 6 months to do that spade work before I knew where I thought we were going.
Good. Philip?
Just speaking a little bit to, you mentioned congregation members leaving. Did any elders leave? And then kind of how has the support been in terms of helping the daughter church? I know it's more directed than that, but I'd love your take too. Helping the daughter church begin to identify, train, equip, raise up elders. Because I think that's one of the crucial phases, maybe where y'all are, a little bit beyond where y'all are, but just speak to that a little bit. Some conversations y'all had, et cetera.
Yeah, no elders from Reformation went with the group. But Zack and I, once the core group was formed, Zack and I had some conversations about it. At least one of the guys in there, we felt like this guy can probably be an elder one day. So it was kind of that initial identifying of things, and then you can probably speak to where you are on that.
Yeah, so this year I'm approaching it informal training, just getting some guys some opportunities, small tasks and equipping and opportunities, and seeing. Next year I plan on opening up to more formal training and seeing how that develops. But it's gonna be interesting. Yeah, we don't have, I think you're right. There's a guy who came with us who certainly could be, at least seems like an elder candidate. But yeah, it'd be interesting to be able to raise up our own elders. There's a challenge to that, but also I'm excited about that opportunity as well.
Thanks.
Now, in terms of, you also asked another question. I do want, when we do elder training, like we have a guy in our church who was a retired minister, and he had a pretty rough experience in his church with leadership and with elders. And so when we do elder training, I want him to come and speak into that and share with our elders, because one of the things that Reformation does so well is the elders are brothers. And like, you don't feel like you're coming in there competing with somebody, or, I mean, I've heard different stories. It doesn't feel like a battle. You're in there together, and there's true love and trust. So how do we cultivate that culture among our session when we do that? So I'd love for Eddie to come speak in that. And then potentially what could happen is a few elders from Reformation come in and help share their experiences, or what's been helpful to continue to pass on that. I hadn't thought about that idea until you mentioned that, Philip.
It's good.
So the Fletcher area, did Reformation have some family units that were already in that area?
Yeah.
And did they wind up coming into the core group? And then just a follow-up question to that. You had a core group of 30 to 40, you said?
30 adults and kids total.
Okay. What kind of trials did you have when you started to mix new people coming in from Fletcher to your core group that had a culture from Reformation?
Yeah. Let me try to keep both those two questions in mind. Yeah, we did. That was one of the other factors, was where we're going to plant. Is we did have some people who were traveling from Fletcher to Hendersonville. And so we had some key families who wanted to be part of it. Now, not everybody, actually, there was a few people who live in Fletcher who are like, no, we're not going to do the church plant. And that's fine. So it's not 100%, but there was people who certainly are part of our church now who live in Fletcher, and that was a consideration. Second question was?
You had a core group from Reformation,
Yeah.
and there's a culture from that church that they're bringing into the church plant.
Yeah.
How did that, what kind of difficulties did you have when you started bringing in new people to the church plant from the Fletcher area?
Yeah.
That had no background with Reformation?
Yeah. Honestly, we haven't had difficulties yet. Now we're in the middle of it, right? Like next week something can happen, right? So like we're still very much in the midst and thick of things. I think having that fall where we were working together, like what are our expectations? That's been huge. And the people who have bought into that, part of reaching our community is we want new people. And what does that mean? And also just Reformation has been great about it. We were clear about it. There's a lot of Reformation culture that we want to continue on, but we also are going to become our own church. And that means some things might be different, not on a principle, biblical level, but just some specifics.
Yeah.
And our core team from the beginning understood that they weren't trying to make Reformation 2.0 or a mini Reformation. And so I think that's helped. It was really interesting. Recently at one of our meetings, I looked up and I just surveyed the room real fast. I'm like, we are half our core team. And we moved away from that language. It's just church members now because core team becomes exclusive when you're welcoming new people in. But I was looking, I was like, oh, it's half people who came with us and it's half new people. So we are kind of in the middle of that transition now. And our people are actually really excited about it. They're like, we're growing. This is what we want. And the people who are coming in are buying into our vision and what we're about. Like there's a new family who joined and like, there's nothing flashy here. You guys are just reading the Bible, praying together, and talking about Jesus and living life together. And we have been dying for something like this. And so they buy into that culture.
Yes.
As a future mother church, God willing, this question's for you. What would you say are the top couple, 3 things that the mother church has done that have, you might have already said these in the conversation, that has truly benefited? You said this is really important that the mother church has done for us.
Yeah. The first one is Matt mentoring me, right? Not every mother church is going to be in that position. You might bring in someone and it's not that kind of relationship. That's fine. But in my case, just training me up and giving me space to grow, giving me space to make mistakes, giving me some years of experience. I mean, that was just huge. So I honestly like that's the biggest thing. The second biggest, and it's not small, is the financial support. There's so many unknowns in church planting. I mean, and I got our where we meet is Fletcher Elementary. It's been great. I hope we're there for another year or two before we establish, kind of our base camp where we know for sure. But the principal just told me, hey, I'm retiring. I think it should be no problem, but he can't give that guarantee. It's up to the next principal. And so who knows, right? Like next week we might be scrambling. Where are we going to be? And that's just a lot of living. There's so many uncertainties, right? And to have the financial support, and I have to do the work of support raising. I still have to raise each year $50,000 outside of what's coming from Presbytery or Reformation. But I'm not up at night, like, where's the money going to come from? Of course, there might be moments like that for a church planter, especially at the very beginning, and that's fine. You live by faith, God's going to provide. But if the mother church can support financially, strongly, and well, it frees the church planter not to do support raising as much as to be on the ground and get in the lives of people and all that. So that's a huge, huge thing that a mother church can do. It may not look like what Reformation was able to do.
Maybe talk a little bit about the finances. Sorry, I'm taking over this. Talk a little bit about the finances real quick, because that is an important part of it. Just like, what were your funding sources? How did that all work out?
Yeah. So in your Explorer year, you don't have a core team, right? The first 6 months, I didn't have a core team giving, and the core team didn't give until we started worship a year later. And so that's not a funding source. So what it is, I think for our Explorer year was everyone, so it was Sending Church, it was Presbytery, Domination, and then me as the church planter. So those were kind of the 4 parties involved. And Reformation gave $32,000. Presbytery matched that $32,000. ONA through 2 different funds gave $36,000, and then I had to raise $50,000. And the second year was the same thing. And now we're starting to step down. The outside sources, they're still giving, but then the inside, now our core church members are giving. And that's another source for the funding. And then also, I mean, this is like on top of it, Reformation did that capital campaign and sent our church with $100,000 just to startup costs of equipment and space and all this. I mean, all that comes up with starting a church. And that's going to actually, we still have that money and we've used some of that money, but that's going to set us up then for other opportunities, whether a building comes up or staffing, or we need to hire a director or all that as that comes along.
Another thing just for the mother to think about in terms of the finances, like once we knew the core group, well, actually before that, we started planning, because you're going to send off a chunk of your congregation. They're not going to give to you anymore. So we planned ahead for 2 years. We actually put in our budget to save money to replace their income. So that over the course of 2 years, I can't remember what we saved exactly, but it was enough to replace their income so that if we didn't grow for a period of time, we had money in the bank to kind of replace that. So that might be something to kind of think about going forward.
Other questions? Hold on, we have one right here. Bill, share the, go ahead, Alan.
Could you unpack a little bit more about your research during that Explorer year, particularly who you talked to, how you strategically met people in Fletcher?
Yeah. It was a lot of, I don't know how to answer that, Alan. You just start talking to people and then that follows, who else can I talk to, right? So, I don't know. Having talked with Tom Sugar, and he had positive experience talking with the mayor when he was church planting. I reached out to the mayor and just said, hey, this is who I am and what I'm doing. Can we get some time? And he said, yeah, that was great. And then he would say, hey, have you talked to so-and-so? And then I go and talk to the next city council member or business owner. I would go to the schools and talk with principals and just asking like, what need is there? If there were a church, how could that church help? I think having a posture of, hey, this is who we are, what we're about, and we want to help our town and community. What would that look like? Was really opened a lot of doors. So we're at Fletcher Elementary now, and when Helene hit, we reached out to the school before. This is back in the fall when we're just meeting as a core team saying, hey, how can we help and serve? And they gave us some ways and we did it. We had no expectations that we'd end up at Fletcher Elementary. Fast forward, we're looking for a space. I had a positive relationship with the town. The town would let us we did preview services January. I hate that term, but January, February, and March, we had one Sunday a month but they're like, you can only do that for this period and you got to find somewhere else. So then we're figuring out where we're going to be so we can be every Sunday. Reached out to the principal of Fletcher Elementary. He's like, yeah, let's make this happen. So a lot of networking came out of that. I would talk to real estate agents and who in the area should I talk to? I mean, I'm not sure. And then I'd also go and spend time talking with other church planters. Or I didn't do as much. Alan encouraged me and I didn't listen. Was to go to the different churches in Fletcher and go to their worship and just kind of get to know. I have since made a lot of good relationships with pastors in Fletcher, but yeah.
Okay, if I did that well, so that's why I asked the question.
I just comment that, part of the Explorer period is preparing to write a proposal for presbytery to approve so that you become a mission congregation. And, there's demographic work to do for that and writing all. One of the things I noticed that Zack did was he sort of focused more on the relational connections in the community than he did trying to write a slick proposal. And I just remember noticing like
It was pretty good though.
It was pretty good. It was slick. Yeah. But I remember you talk about even along the way, like, at some point I got to get to writing this proposal. But he had done such a good job of making connections and just getting a feel for the community and people there that I think the proposal kind of came pretty naturally.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, numbers are important, but also that's just how I'm built. You can make a lot of demographic. You can make statistics say anything. And so I was given a lot of numbers. I was like, I can't make sense of this. And so I needed to just be on the ground.
Yeah. That's good. Yes, sir.
Could I get more information about the assessment process? And at one point, gifts were mentioned, and like, did Zack get a score? I mean, how do you know?
100.
How do you know you have the right person to plant? And what else goes into the assessment process?
I'll address how do you know you have the right person. I don't know how to answer that completely, but I will say Zack had been in our church for years as an associate, well known and loved by the people. So that and having seen him grow and his gifts develop, it made it really easy for us to think about him going out with a group. So that was very helpful with what you talked about.
I mean,
assessment.
Well, other people, actually, assessors are in this room that should answer that question, right? What that looks
Yeah,
like.
I have too much time to spend on that, which I'd love to answer your question offline, how the process works. More particularly wanted to address mother-daughter, if there are any particular mother-daughter questions. But it's a great question. We have a process that we go through. I see that hand. Yes, sir.
Zach, question for you.
Yeah.
Where's your first daughter church gonna be?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I don't know the answer to that, but yeah. The provisional session has already talked about, let's start to set aside money for a daughter. We don't know an area. We also are trying to get an intern. If you know of anybody who's looking for a church planting internship, we'd love to offer a 2-year internship so that we could, there's a lot of ways that could go. We'd love for that to eventually be where we could bring that person on staff, and then that would be the person that we'd send out to plant the daughter. And maybe that we just invest in somebody and then they have another opportunity and we're part of the kingdom, and that's great. So our provisional session is try to think, how can we, even as a church plant, be about church planting? And the other way is we give financially, we give to other church plants. So our people know, okay, we are all about church planting. And even as a church plant, we're giving the church plants. We're trying to bring an intern that we can invest in a future of church planting. And we're also, provisional session, want to set aside money for a daughter church plant one day. I don't know the location yet.
I know there's a God more questions. I'm sorry, guys. We need to go ahead and cut it off at 8 o'clock. Sorry about that. Again, my hope in this time is, maybe I didn't do a good job on who the audience would be. My hope would be, as we got it recorded now, is to blast it out to all of our churches to be able to say, are we thinking of mother-daughter? Are we thinking mother-daughter? Because that is the statistically most successful way in order to plant a church, particularly in the ARP. And so that's primarily what I'm after. Yes, sir.
I just want to say, I think if you're even thinking about it, you might be closer than you think you are. There's some things out there, people say you have to be either a certain number or whatever. If you're thinking about it and praying about it, continue to have those conversations.
Amen.
I think honestly, my take, and I could be wrong, I think a lot more of our churches could be doing this than they are.
Well, I think it's similar to, I'm not ready to get married. I'm not ready to have children.
Yeah.
You're never, in some sense. So I think you consider yourself in that regard as a church. You're never, ever going to, quote, be ready. So that was my extra credit there. Let me pray for any in the room that are considering this situation. Come up to these guys, take a few more minutes. I'm sure you guys are willing to talk a little more with them. If not now, offline or during the emails and other things. So let's pray. Lord Jesus, I thank you for just the enthusiasm that these two bring to a room like this of men that are considering in some capacity, if not considering praying, I pray for our denomination to have more relationships like this one, that we could see healthy daughter situations occurring. Lord, if there is an elder in the room, a pastor in the room who is interested in this, that they would, as we just mentioned, just realize you're never ready, but begin praying now. Put a group of people together to pray about this. Set money aside. It will build upon itself, the enthusiasm. Again, thank you for Zack and for Matt. Thank you for the work that they have done and will continue to do. Stir in all of us an interest in growing our denomination through, efforts like church planting. We bless you and we thank you in Christ's name. Amen. Thank you all.
Yeah.